For those of you who missed Morning Joe on Friday, this particular segment has Michael Moore, and this segment goes 40 minutes, so I just want to prepare you for the length of time that this segment is going to go. The segment to me was super important, and I've watched it twice, and I'm making this video on it on my third watch. A couple of things come to mind. Number one, the interviews of everyday, ordinary people presented, in my opinion, a fairly decent cross-section of the people, especially across the Rust Belt. It confirmed what a lot of people have said subsequent to the election, that the Democrats basically ignored everyday folks. And in my opinion, that's pretty much true. This segment also, in my mind, shows that Michael Moore, who's obviously a white guy, he got it. He got it across racial lines, economic lines, etc. And he's a Democrat, and he voted for Clinton. The two people that surprised me was Eddie Glaude, who is a black college professor. In my opinion, he absolutely did not get it, and he jumped into race as a major cause of contention, and I 100% disagree. Well, let me make it 90% disagree, because race always plays a part in elections, large or small. But in this particular election, in my opinion, it wasn't about race. Now, I know that the white supremacists were in there, so, you know, you can gauge or assign whatever you want as far as the percentage that race had to do with it. But in my opinion, the white supremacists didn't tilt this or didn't give the election to Donald Trump. Yeah, they did play their part across the country, voter suppression, etc., etc., etc. But again, my opinion now is that it was a question of the everyday guy in middle America and in not so middle America feeling like they were really being ignored. So in my opinion, Eddie Glaude, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of the Muslim guy that's next to him, neither one of them, in my opinion, got it. And that's a damn shame. Anyway, I've spoken enough. Here is the clip from the Morning Joe show. And again, this is going to go approximately 40 minutes. So, you know, do whatever you need to do to make your preps, you know, or watch it in pieces.
The election results came to a stunning shock to all those who never saw or refused to see the rise of Donald Trump.
I can't think of one person who saw it coming.
But the issues driving his supporters at the ballot box were hardly a secret, as Tom Brokaw reported back in January with an undecided voter in Iowa. Here is business owner Charlie Good.
If you ask me, would I take anybody from Washington, D.C. to come in here and run my business? No way. No way. Because I got something to lose. They'd have nothing to lose. They're playing with our money. I think a lot of things that we're talking about now wouldn't be talked about in a normal election, but because we have some outsiders involved in the race, the things are being talked about. And in my view, no matter how much you love or hate Donald Trump, I think some of the reasons we're talking about these things is because he's keeping him up there.
Wow. NBC News caught up with Charlie after Tuesday's general election, and he did, in fact, vote for Donald Trump. While the economy drove his decision at the ballot box, there were plenty of other issues fueling his supporters, from students to Latinos to disaffected Democrats. And MSNBC's Jacob Soboroff got to know many of them firsthand.
The Donald.
Oh, okay.
If it wasn't Donald, it would be the Bernie.
I think people just don't trust the establishment. They see the big money, and they see these big banks and Wall Street funding and supporting these candidates.
We need to do something about manufacturing jobs, get some good money in jobs back in this country, put people back to work.
The Supreme Court justices for the next election are going to be our children's lives.
I don't like Trump per se,
Yeah.
but I despise Hillary more than I despise him.
You think so?
He's a person that speaks his mind. I'm tired of the normal politician that goes out there and gets polished. They get taught how to speak.
He's a businessman, so he's going to look out for business people.
So you think the people are going to actually vote in for Trump, but Trump won't be the president? Mm-hmm. So you think it might be a rigged election?
Yeah, definitely.
But if it has to happen to better this economy and to better the nation and to secure our borders,
Drugs are pouring in, and our government will not fix it. Trump has pledged that he will fix it.
When you were working in that steel mill, can you ever imagine yourself saying that you might vote for a Republican?
I don't think so. But I think right now, between Hillary and Trump, I kind of lean towards Trump.
Joining us now, filmmaker Michael Moore. His new documentary is Michael Moore in Trumpland. Also with us, author and NBC News contributor Anand Giridharadas. Good to have you both on board.
Michael,
Here we go. And Anand is back to continue.
He is, exactly, and thank God he brought us here.
Thank God.
I would never leave home with him. Yeah, please don't. Please don't.
Yeah.
So, Michael, I saw the auto shop owner, and I was thinking, you know that guy, and I know that guy. Saw those guys sitting up against the wall. You know those guys especially well. That's why you saw it, isn't it? Why you knew Trump was going to win. Why you predicted Trump would win.
Well, yes, I am Trump's demographic. I'm an angry white guy over the age of 35, and I had just a high school education. So I grew up with, I lived with, I still live with, and it's interesting. I was watching your show. I watch it every morning. I can say that.
Thank you. So you've heard me. I hope I haven't lost your friends. I compliment you a lot these days.
No, I'm
sorry.
I take no pleasure in having called this 5 months ago.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't want to hear that really.
Yeah.
But I was watching a couple weeks before the election. I don't know who the guest was, but somebody was remarking here about how the expense report for the Trump campaign showed they'd spent more money on ball caps that month than anything else. And your panelists were going, ball caps!
Right.
And I looked at that and I thought, wow, there's the bubble right there.
The market.
They don't understand.
I remember that conversation.
This is where we're from.
And actually,
this is where I live. And to make fun of,
by the way, people buy those ball caps. They wear those ball caps.
We wear ball caps. We who, to borrow the Dylan line, the country I come from is called the Midwest. This middle America thing, and the reason why they have this anger toward the media, this kind of elitist thing, and I'm not attacking anybody who said that day. I'm just saying, though, that was laughable that they weren't spending money on getting new polls or doing they have no ground game. They have no ground game. Are you kidding me? First of all, the ground game has occurred over the last 30 years. And this did not turn people into Republicans, because it started under Ronald Reagan in Flint, in Detroit, where people lost tens of thousands of jobs. And their lives were decimated. And they were kicked out of the middle class. And when Reagan fired the air traffic controllers, and the other unions didn't stand up and say anything or do anything, that was the end right there. And it just got worse and worse and worse for working
And if you
people.
looked in those crowds of Trump supporters and you saw all those caps being worn, people who go out and buy one and wear it every day are also going to vote. They're not just showing up because it's kind of a cool trend to be at these rallies, which in some ways didn't translate on the Democratic side.
I had somebody tell me, Michael, early on, first time I ran for office, said, get a $1,000 contributor, which I wasn't getting. And I said, nobody give me money. They said, don't worry about it. You get the guy to give you $25.
Right.
He'll go to the gates of hell with you.
Ask Bernie Sanders about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And let me just say it again. If people are confused about Michigan and Wisconsin, Bernie won Michigan and Wisconsin. We saw this back in March. She was
a shock.
He was ahead by 8 to 20 points on the day of the primary.
Big turnaround.
And 12 hours later, she loses in Michigan. And that was a huge red flag. The other red flag was that there were 130,000 more people who voted on the Republican ballot that day in Michigan than the Democratic ballot, in a Democratic state. 130,000 more Republicans voted. And the media completely ignored this. It's like they didn't see what was happening. But for the reason why Bernie won and Trump won Michigan is because, as you've been talking about this election, people wanted change. Well, that's the reason why Bernie won 22 states. How else can you explain a socialist? This is not a socialist country.
Right.
How could a socialist win 22 states? Yeah, because people didn't care about the label. Just as people didn't care about Trump. And here's another thing too, all the talk that you guys and others have done about Trump, we won't reveal his taxes. Why then it was he paid no taxes. Do you understand that people who are struggling from paycheck to paycheck admire, on April 10th,
I said it
they're
in real
doing,
time.
you said this, they sit there trying to not pay the government anything.
Right.
And the fact that there is a guy, and when he went into the microphone during the debate, it's because I'm smart.
Right.
Let me tell you something. I said that was a brilliant way to connect with people, and if you look online, I am blisteringly attacked for saying that was a smart move in terms of connecting with people who will vote for him.
You know, it's like that auto shop guy saying, you know, I don't want a guy from Washington in here with my business because he's got nothing to lose. I want somebody who's been out there that understands, you know, how to run a business.
I hear that, and I think you've done an amazing service coming from where you come from ideologically to make these points. But I just want to say, I think curiosity is a two-way street in a republic. And right now there's a lot of self-flagellation that there was an elite bubble that didn't care to learn about what was happening in the heartland. I just think that's true. I also think that works the other way around. And I go out there and I talk to people, and frankly, I think you can make a case that there's often more curiosity from the elite bubble about at least some of what's happening in these places. Correspondents are sent. You have sent correspondents to these places. And when I go and have these encounters, I actually don't get a lot of curiosity back about...
That's because they're...
Let me stop it right there. When you're doing well and you know your rent or mortgage is paid and there's food on the table and your lights, you turn on a switch and you're not even thinking about if your light's going to come on or not, and you know, your kids, you know, are clothed, and when you get that 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks off to take vacations that you can pretty much go to a decent place, you can afford to be curious about things. You have excess time on your hands, okay? You don't have the stress of struggling to eke out an existence day to day. On the other side of that, if you're wondering where the next meal is coming from, are you going to be able to come up with that rent money for your apartment or for that mortgage? Is your light going to be on? I'm sorry, are your lights going to be on? Is there going to be gas for you to heat your home, or are you going to have enough money to pay the fuel oil bill, you know, so that you can heat your home? Is your water going to be on? And on top of that, is your water going to be safe? If you, and I didn't even mention about your kids or your grandkids, if you have to think about all of those things every single day, you don't have the luxury of or want to exert or spend the time being curious about somebody else that's living a good life in New York or San Francisco, Silicon Valley, etc. So he didn't get it. He absolutely didn't get it. This wasn't a question of curiosity being able to go both ways, because clearly on one side, this, you know, the well-off, you know, or decently well-off side, their concerns were completely different from the side that had no economic livelihood or ability to go beyond paycheck to paycheck, and that's even if they had a paycheck. So he missed it completely. And he is part of the problem that the Democrats had. And Eddie Glaude is another part of the problem, but Eddie's going to come at it from a different direction. Here we go.
There's no curiosity. That's because you don't care about the elites.
It's not about the elites. It's about cities. It's about
it's about they don't care about Wall Street. They don't care about corporate America. They don't care about the
half of people in New York are not elites. Are actually pretty struggling economically. I don't get curiosity about them either. Small town America is as incurious about other places as we are about it, and that's
and small town America's job is not to educate America on the electoral process. That's what we all get paid to do, and we have failed. Michael, go ahead.
I just want to say that we talk about this as if there was just white people in Michigan. The African American vote in Detroit was down. The African American vote in Flint was down. I was getting calls all day from congressmen and other people in the Democratic Party. Mike, can you get on social media? The African American vote, we're not showing up. And it's like, well, that's because it's depressed. And it's depressed because things happened that, again, the media didn't pay any attention to. Barack Obama, who I love, and voted for twice.
All right, and this, and I was following the Flint water crisis left and right, and even I didn't pick up on this particular feature that Mike is going to bring up. Barack Obama basically thumbed his nose at the African American people, pretty much all the people in the city of Flint. Okay, and even I didn't pick up on it.
And I will miss dearly. But he showed up to Flint 5 months ago and drank the water when it was still not fixed. The pipes are still not replaced. He drank the water to say it's all okay, everyone. And it was like a knife in the heart of the people of Flint, a black city. Saw the president do this. And it just deflated. I saw everybody just get deflated. The pipes still haven't been replaced. The water's still poisoned. After that, how much attention, how many shows on Flint since he drank the water? I mean, it's things like that just like, we don't want to say anything because we don't want to attack him because he's attacked enough. But it's like, this thing just gets ignored. The woman, the mom, who had the first question in the Flint debate, and she learns that she was just a prop, that Donna Brazile fed the question to the campaign. So she's standing there as a woman whose children are poisoned, thinking her question is being heard for the first time by the candidates. And it is being heard by one candidate for the first time. But the other candidate has been fed the question. And so she's on TV the week before this election saying, I was used. But they didn't.
And she was used, okay? And that all stems from the damn primaries being rigged for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. And Bernie's being a good soldier about the whole thing, but he got fucked, plain and simple. The Democratic Party fucked him. And this is the result.
Vote for Trump, though, right? No, they stayed home. Or remarkably, that's the point, though. Remarkably, let's just say this, that right now, essentially, she's lost. I voted for her. I'm for her. She lost by 11,000 votes in Michigan. 90,000 Michiganders voted for every office and every ballot proposal on both sides of the ballot and refused to vote for president. Wow. They couldn't vote for Trump.
Right.
They knew that was wrong. But they were not going to participate in what they saw as a system that had left them forgotten and at bay. And that was the end of that for Flint and Detroit and the state of Michigan. And I was there up until 2 a.m. on election morning, holding rallies, trying to turn it around on my own. I'm not part of the campaign. I was just doing my own thing. And I could see that this wasn't going to happen and that what I had said back in the summer, sadly, was going to be true.
Michael, can I ask you this, though?
I'm sorry.
I think the election's over, And we have to understand the pain, the angst, all the things you talk about that led to this result. But my fear for the very people you are talking about is that they voted for a populist with some amount of authoritarian tendencies.
Some amount.
And what they're going to get is an authoritarian with a little bit of populism.
Did that beautiful thing with The Way We Were?
Yeah.
With that, it was just hilarious.
Oh, my Lord.
That should be on iTunes.
Yeah.
But please do another one where from yesterday with Trump and Obama sitting there, do one with how many ums Obama, he's trying to be such a classy guy. Trying to doing the right thing, right? Trying to give a tutorial to Trump. Like this is what we were expecting you to do when Hillary won, when you were calling for people to go to the streets if you lost.
Right.
This is what it should have looked like. But I counted somewhere between 12 and 15 ums. He couldn't quite get it out. Trying to be gracious, but just like all that was missing was Obama wearing a t-shirt that said, "I'm with stupid." Because Trump is just sitting there like, yeah.
Well, 8 years ago, when we were bringing in another president, we were acting like the world had actually, received them. I'm just saying, expectations are low. Let's have an open mind.
Well, no, I am.
Did Obama say that?
But I'm not with him on that. I understand why he and Hillary have to take that position. They should. That's their job.
Their duty is different from
our duty. We are going to resist. We are going to oppose. These demonstrations you're seeing on the streets, when it's in places last night like Milwaukee and Nashville, not exactly Berkeley and Ann Arbor, all right? This is going to continue tonight and the next night and the next night. And all he has to do is start nominating Rudy Giuliani as Attorney General and things like that, or his Supreme Court. This is going to be a massive resistance. There's already, women are calling for a 1 million woman march on the inauguration day. And there's going to be the largest demonstration ever on inauguration day, and there are going to be demonstrations like that, but we're also going to organize, you've seen nothing like everything that they were going to do to Hillary, the obstruction that they did to Obama for 8 years, and putting her on trial for impeachment. Let me just say, I was just saying to Lupica there in the room, that here's what's going to happen. This is why we're not going to have to suffer through 4 years of Donald J. Trump, because he has no ideology except the ideology of Donald J. Trump. And when you have a narcissist like that, who's so narcissistic where it's all about him, he will, maybe unintentionally, break laws. He will break laws because he's only thinking about what's best for him.
Aren't you now wishing ill on him instead of...
I don't have to wish ill. He is ill. I think he is ill. He is racist. He is a misogynist. He is an authoritarian. Bertram Gross, a philosopher who's no longer with us, wrote a book in 1980 called Friendly Fascism. And what he said was that the fascism of the 21st century would not be concentration camps and cattle cars and all of that. It would come with a smiley face, maybe even a TV show. And he would be popular, and he would say all the right things, and people will willingly bring him in and give up their rights even to him. This is what we're facing.
So on and beyond the protests we've seen over the last few days that we'll continue to see this week, what does that mean? What is that resistance that we keep hearing about? We say there has to be a resistance to Donald Trump. What does that mean practically?
So I want to go back to something you said early this morning about a reset. And we owe him an open mind. The president set that tone, Hillary Clinton set the tone. And I just want to separate what their duty is as the president as a constitutional officer. He has to do that.
Right.
This country could be blood in the streets if he doesn't do that.
Right. Okay.
I don't think it follows that we all need to do a reset. That's our own judgments, right? But I think, let me make the case against the reset.
Like the Republicans before Barack Obama became president.
Analogous, but for me, very different reason.
But it's the same thing.
Joe, you had me back to...
I know, but it's the same thing. So if you didn't criticize
the Republicans,
and then criticize the Republicans for 8 years for doing that, then you certainly have every right to do that.
Let me make the case. So I think there is a case for peace for doing this reset, doing this open mind. Let me make the case against it. I think this is someone who was very, very clear and declarative about his personality, his tendency, the way he thinks, and very specific things about what he wanted to do. And the risk of the reset, for me, is that we set the bar very low and we judge him only by what he did the day before, and we lose memory. And the importance of a resistance to me right now is not marching in the streets as the only form of resistance, but thinking and remembering and holding him to account for what he has said and being vigilant. And when there's a hate crime in a university, being very fast to respond to it. And thinking about civil society is going to be really, really important in the next 4 years in a way it was not in the last 8 years. And resistance could just mean the ACLU getting more funding, and organizations that stand up for refugees getting more funding, and people who investigate hate crimes getting more funding. Resistance is going to be a multifarious thing. But if we judge him by yesterday, every day, we're going to miss the plot.
I think you missed the plot, though, when he announced that he was running for president, because you just said, I think this is someone, and you gave a long list of pretty bad things. You also, in your world, said, I think this is someone who could never win. So we have been wrong before.
You know, can I just say,
never said that. I said,
1 month after he announced, 1 month after
a lot of people did.
I said, this man is going to be the Republican nominee. Right. I said in Bill Maher, everybody laughed. They thought I was joking, and I said, well, that's because, fellow lefty liberals, you don't watch Celebrity Apprentice.
Thank you.
I watch TV. Most of you don't own a TV. I watch Celebrity. I watch American Idol. I know that Jennifer Hudson lost in Fantasia. And I know in America. Yes, I live in America. I watch. Yes,
but she'll be.
I watch The Bachelorette. I'm like everyone else. Yes, like everyone else. I share when Caitlyn picked Sean over Nick.
Oh my God!
In the whole country, right?
It was like, what is going on?
Everybody said Nick was going to win, and then Sean.
It should have been Nick.
Of course it should have been, just like it should have been Hillary. But that's the country we live in, and I try to get liberals to understand.
Let me ask you this question.
To come out of the bubble and live in the world your fellow
Do you
Americans
remember Ruben
are living
Studdard?
in.
I loved him.
Let me ask you, you want liberals to come, I want to go back to a point that Anand was making earlier. You want liberals to come out of their bubble, elite, the Cadillac limousine liberals to come out of their bubble to understand mid-America. What might mid-America be doing to come out of their bubble to understand the diversity of the world?
They're not in a bubble.
No, but this is the point, though.
No, see, and this is what Eddie doesn't get, okay? The elite, I'm just going to use the word elite, even though, you know, they're not really elite, but the well-to-do, okay, or the better off, that's a better terminology. The better off can afford, okay, to look around, to observe, you know, to consider other people. But when you're not well-to-do, when you're basically just surviving, you can't afford to take your eye off the ball of what you need to do to survive. So, yeah, they may, in fact, be in a bubble, but that is a survival bubble. That is being concerned with everyday existence. That's your bubble. And nobody is coming out of that bubble. Because if you take that well-to-do person and they get fired from their job and they get blackballed, they're going to be in the same position as that not well-to-do person. Now watch how fast they stop paying attention to everything that's going on in a state or another country or another area of the country. They are no longer concerned about that. Now they're concerned about trying to eke out an existence just like that guy in the Midwest that's in his survival bubble. So Eddie Glaude is full of shit on this one.
This has been dug for them.
Kathy Kramer will wonderful.
Let him answer your question, okay? Because he's been asked this twice and he keeps getting cut off. I'm sorry, but for somebody living in middle America, it's blaming the victim. Why don't they understand us in Manhattan? I know. But you're asking somebody in Flint, you're asking somebody in Flint, Michigan, who's drinking poison water to understand this. Hey, guys, I know you don't want us to finish.
We have to understand each other.
I know you don't want us to finish the sentence, and I know you don't want him to make the point, but the point will be made. Okay, you don't blame the victim, and you don't ask a single mom in Flint, Michigan, whose kids are drinking contaminated water, to understand our feelings in Manhattan, to come out of their bubble. Oh no, they're not in a bubble. They're living it every day.
They're living in hell, is what their whole. If you're lucky enough to have a relative in Detroit, you drive the kids an hour and a half every Saturday for the one bath of the week. That's the reality. Of course. And so, when the media goes, how can African American vote be down in Flint? This is a black town. Well, because they have given up. They have been hurt and abused and attacked, and the system hasn't responded. Democrats didn't respond, Republicans didn't respond, and this was their chance for revenge.
So we keep
This was their chance to say, I'm out of this. I haven't checked out as an American.
We keep asking.
I hear you, and I want to be clear. I think you have a point, Joe. I'm not arguing that they have a responsibility to understand Manhattan elites. I'm making a larger point about you can't have a republic if curiosity is not a two-way street. I'm not saying spend 5 hours a day studying the feelings of Manhattan elites, but we have fallen.
Curious about
But they're curious. They're curious.
Curiosity is a state of
That's why they voted for Bernie, because they're curious enough to find out what does it mean to be a democratic socialist.
So, you know,
this guy is different. He's changed. Right. I'm going to vote for Bernie. And they were very curious. Right. That's why they elected him over Hillary in the primary.
I heard somebody say a couple days ago, and Michael, I think you'll laugh at it as much as me. People are talking about the competing philosophies that people in middle America were juggling with and all this other la. No, I've run for office 4 times. I know what people think about when they go into the voting booth. They think about one thing. How do I pay my rent?
Of course.
How do I get my kid from community college to the state college? If they're in Flint, Michigan, it's how the hell do I afford clean drinking water for my kids? They are not being philosophical, and so many elites in New York City, who, let's face it, we can afford to go into the voting booth and be philosopher kings and rub our chins and say, well, you know, I'm going to make a point by not voting for either candidate. But Michael, they don't have that luxury.
That's right.
90% of Americans don't have that luxury. They vote to survive.
So there are 3 points I want to make really quickly. One is that I understand that middle America, and not only middle America, but folks who are catching hell in urban spaces, feel a loss of power, a sense of powerlessness. I understand that they feel disrespected. But I also understand that a lot of people in this country feel that people are taking their stuff away, that they're deserving, they're working their behinds off, and they deserve more than what they're getting. Right. And the reason why they think they're not getting more than what they're deserving is because the big government is taking stuff from deserving people and giving it to undeserving people.
Right.
And the undeserving people are people that don't live in my neighborhood. They don't look like me. They don't have the same religion as I do. I don't want to marry my children. They are different than me.
And guess what?
Those people have been attracted to Trump. Not these black folk, not these brown folk, not these Muslims who are catching hell.
All right, let me stop him right there. He has a point to a minor degree, okay? He has a point. What he's trying to say is there is a racial tinge to their outlook, okay? And that may, in fact, be true. But, and I do say but because that negates everything that I just said, their number one reason for doing what they did, for voting for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, for voting for Donald Trump in the general, is because they at least were being paid attention to and their issues were being spoken on. So that Trump side, which is what Eddie is pushing, is that stuff's being taken away from me and given to somebody else. No, I'm not. I'm not going to subscribe to that piece. There is some of that, but it is not a major factor as far as my opinion is concerned. So Eddie, in my opinion, is wrong on this one.
Part of what I'm trying to get out here is not that middle America lives in a bubble. It's not that I'm some Ivy League philosopher king going in and doing what I did. What I'm trying to get at is at the heart of this country is some deep racial animus that animates, right, the very communities that we're trying to lift up.
That deep racial animus elected Barack Obama twice, and
Yes,
very
twice.
people. I gotta repeat it again, and then Michael, I'll go to you. I gotta repeat it again because it's mad.
Let it breathe.
People,
See, and that's where Eddie loses the argument, because those same people in Flint, Michigan, and Detroit, Michigan, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Madison, Wisconsin, those same, and let's just call it the way it is, those same white people 8 years ago and 4 years ago voted for Barack Obama. So either they all of a sudden became racist, which I absolutely will not subscribe to, or Eddie's argument is without merit, and that's what I believe. Those people were looking for change, and Hillary Clinton damn sure wasn't addressing the change that they were looking for. So Eddie, sorry, your argument is without merit based on the voting results of 2008 and 2012.
that live by data should die by data, and the data, according to Nate Cohn and the New York Times, says this. And let those who have ears to hear, hear. The very people who helped elect Barack Obama, President of the United States twice, just elected in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Ohio,
Well, Michigan's
and in
not called,
Pennsylvania,
but okay.
Donald J. Trump. It's the data. Michael.
That's right. You have to accept that millions of people who voted for Barack Obama, some of them once, some of them twice, changed their minds this time. They're not racist. They twice voted for a man whose middle name is Hussein. That's the America you live in. That even though this country is only 12% black, the vast majority of this country, especially its young people, if you remember, it was really the only white demographic he won in 08, was 18 to 35-year-olds. They poured out in record numbers. They made that happen. But if you put people through another 8 years where there's no middle-class jobs, they're struggling to get by, the basic things like you said, the price of a box of cereal doubles. These are the things that are important to people because they're trying to get by. They're living from paycheck to paycheck.
And things are being taken away from them. And Professor Glaude, can I please add to that the Democratic Party took away their candidate in many cases. They rigged the system and stabbed in the back Bernie Sanders.
That's right.
They took away stuff.
This system from the start against Bernie Sanders.
And I think actually, I'll just say, reflecting on
and that's why the Democratic Party we have to take over, progressives have to take over this party immediately. When I hear, God bless him, Howard Dean, we love him, but you either going to go forward into the future or backward, and that is backward.
I think hovering, if I were to step back from this conversation we've been having, which is an important and good one.
It's gone way over the top of the hour.
I think the ghost of Bernie Sanders was hanging over this conversation.
Yes.
Bernie was a populist who wasn't an authoritarian.
And they wanted him.
He was a populist who heard everything you're talking about.
And people voted.
And didn't abuse it.
Yeah.
And didn't exploit it to take it somewhere that actually has nothing to do with it, like Islam. And 22 states for a socialist, as you pointed out, is an amazing thing.
Can I also say, for a Jewish American, a 74-year-old
who was kind of crotchety and
socialist who was kind of crotchety?
Yeah.
You don't know.
A curmudgeon.
We talk about big money in politics.
Right.
The thing that I've said all along, Donald Trump wasn't the revolution, even though he's revolutionized politics in a lot of ways, because he was on TV, just like Ronald Reagan was on TV for several years. So this has actually been done before. Because people always go Reagan, B-list act. No, he was in General Electric Theater for about 8 years in the 50s and early 60s, so everybody knew him. Bernie Sanders was the revolution. $270 million raised, an average of $28. Every time Bernie came on, would laugh and say, sneeze, sneeze. He'd go, why? Because every time you sneeze, you raise $3 million.
And here it is.
And Bernie Sanders was a remarkable thing. And he was that revolution, Willie, that we've seen from the very beginning. 2016, Bernie changed everything. Donald Trump won. He was a revolution in his own way. Because he was a revolution because he destroyed both political parties. Yeah. Donald Trump is not a Republican. Donald Trump is in Donald Trump's party.
Just
He
run a tank
destroyed
through both parties.
political parties, but Bernie Sanders showed an insurgent candidate how to get elected president, but the Democrats wouldn't allow it. They rigged the system, and they've paid the ultimate price by being thrown out on all levels of government.
And Michael, it appears that the Democratic Party has already learned the lesson you're preaching right now. Chuck Schumer has just come out and backed Keith Ellison to run the DNC.
Right. Perfect.
Does that mean someone like Elizabeth Warren is the leading candidate next time around? Is that the kind of person who should run?
Or is that overcorrecting?
Which, by the way, Sumika said should have run all along.
Right now, people are trying to digest it, but I just mean what they're already talking about.
No, I just mean the direction the
That's
party's
gonna be an
headed. It has to
overcorrection.
turn
Just
farther
that
left.
kind of
But yes,
We're gonna
of course
overcorrect.
she is.
Right.
And let me ask you this. If on the ballot on Tuesday, the name on the ballot had been Michelle Obama,
Oh, yeah.
who would be president today? And why don't Democrats run more below? Oprah would lose. Oprah would
Obama
lose.
and
Why don't
Clinton had a
we do
deal
that?
from the get-go.
So funny you say that. So funny you say that because as this Trump thing was happening, I was thinking that Barack Obama's breakthrough in 2008, few people remember it, was when Oprah showed up in South Carolina. And it was the first huge crowd he had. It was the first time people said, wait a second. That and when David Geffen said she was an unusually good liar. But I was thinking this campaign, you know, if Oprah Winfrey had won in 2008, she would have been president for the past 8 years.
Right.
We are a celebrity-based culture. And you're exactly right.
Can I just say, too, I feel really bad for Hillary. She won the popular vote.
so bad.
She will go down in history as the first woman who was elected by the popular vote, but didn't take the White House. And this is a historic moment that we should not forget. I wish, you know, they would never have me on as an advisor on a campaign like that. But that day that she fainted and ditched the press and ditched her, where did she go? Where did she go? She went to her daughter's apartment, right? She did what moms do, what moms and daughters do. And she ditched the whole thing. But when she came out and somebody yelled, somebody in the press go, how are you feeling? And I think what could have won the election for her, if at that moment she just said, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
I'm going to go lay down. Because Bernie, if he had been coming out of his kid's apartment, that's what I feel like crap.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me the question? Get out of here, I got pneumonia. And what are you doing on my yard?
Everything was sort of...
It's the real, it's the honesty. And as I said to you last time I was here, because you've all been around her, so you know she's great, she's wonderful, personable, likable, and a great sense of humor.
You want to see, by the way, for Americans that haven't had a chance to spend time with Hillary Clinton personally, and I've said, you've heard me, I've said it all the time, I really like her. Personally, show the picture of Hillary if you can. Get that. If you want to know what she looks like when she's off guard, that's the Hillary Clinton that all of her friends know.
Beautiful.
The Hillary Clinton, beautiful. The Hillary Clinton, though, that for some reason she could never show America. And you said something earlier that I want to go back on. You had said that the sort of the spirit of Bernie Sanders is over the stable. It reminds me of and this is what people that want to strike out and say, oh, it's all about racism, et cetera, should actually go back to an April New York Times story that I thought was pretty remarkable. I'm sure, Michael, you saw it too. It showed a shuttered factory, and it talked about how members of the same family who had never voted Republican before were split. And that cities that were disproportionately impacted by globalism and technology were overwhelmingly voting for either Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. And some members' families who had always voted different split. I mean, these two candidates spoke to the same communities. These two candidates actually represented the views of Michael Moore's America and the middle America that is now Trump land, from the Jersey border to the Oregon border.
And we know from around the world, we actually had less experience of populism recently in our politics. We know from around the world there's light populism and dark populism. And there's exploitative populism that abuses the views of people like you're talking about, and there's populism that elevates it. And I have a lot of friends right now who are in physical trauma over Hillary's loss, and the Canada conversations come up. And I just want to say, don't move to Canada. Stay here.
Canada doesn't want.
But if you do move to Canada, go to Vancouver. It's got a really mild
Great bike lanes.
It's not too far from San Francisco.
Exactly.
Cool place.
Great Chinese food.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
And
I've never been to Vancouver.
stay in America, and after your wounds have been nursed a little bit, really think about what we learned this year, and don't just quickly go, I actually don't want us to rush, just find the next candidate and put it on top of the same party.
Exactly.
Let's just take a little time to think about what we learned this year. We learned facts this year.
Can we pause and reset? Can we have an open mind?
We can, but I think it's a lot easier to do that when you haven't had someone run on a platform of hate.
I understand.
Because you can't ask people who have been told because of their color, or because of their religion, or because of their gender, that they are less than.
But don't block out the very people you came here to defend.
No, I understand, but I'm talking about the candidate. You're asking for an open mind with Donald J. Trump.
I am for those people.
But no, we need to, the media, myself, you, everybody watching, needs to talk at Thanksgiving dinner to their brother-in-law, to their cousin, to whoever, and have a conversation where we're not yelling and where we listen to each other, and then try to explain and try to feel and find that common ground.
Right.
Yeah, of course we're upset. One candidate, well, you mentioned Bernie and Trump, one candidate sought to not just, Bernie didn't want to blow up the system, but he did want a revolution that would change it, and he offered a plan to rebuild.
Right.
The other candidate said these words, I want to blow up the system and drain the swamp.
Right.
And never presented an actual plan as to how he was going to, the great builder didn't present a plan, the blueprints of how he was going to rebuild.
Right.
Can I take up your Thanksgiving point?
Just 1 second. I do want to say this. I wanted to go to Eddie on this point, though. Common ground.
Common ground.
Common ground. We should be able to find common ground because you have two candidates, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Stylistically is different as could be, ideologically different, and also as far as planning out the future, as different as could be. But people in Middle America saw a commonality between those two people, saw a common ground.
Right.
So shouldn't we try to find the common ground between those two people and pass legislation in Washington to help people in Middle America who are hurting right now?
Right. Remember, I said on this show numerous times that as much as we wanted to criticize the establishment of the Democratic Party, we need to ask ourselves, what has the Republican Party done for Middle America, right? What can we say? So part of what I was trying to suggest is that the overall economic philosophy that's governed this country over the last 2 decades, or even more so, has devastated and decimated workers. But let me say this.
And that's why Donald Trump, by the way, was able to destroy the Republican
Right, but then we
Party.
look at the fundamentals of his platform, just the basics, because we haven't seen any particulars. We see it's a lot of business as usual in some ways. But I want to say this, that one of the interesting things about the Bernie and the Donald Trump thing is that both of them had trouble. Both of them, in different ways, had trouble around race. Now, Bernie Sanders had trouble in the primary around race because of the black political establishment, which is indistinguishable for me from the Democratic Party establishment. But there was an insistence that perhaps he could translate this economic policy, because economics and race in the United States are so intimately, inextricably bound together. And there was this push among a whole bunch of folks to try to get him to articulate the racial question, right, in light of his economic philosophy, and he just couldn't do it. He was growing. Right, he was moving, but he just couldn't do it. And when we drill down at the numbers of who voted for him, and we need to understand the Democratic black electorate is not all of black America. We look at those black millennials. They didn't break for Hillary Clinton like folk thought they did.
Right.
So part of what I'm saying here is that even in the populism from the left and the authoritarian populism from the right, both of them got this race issue wrong. They didn't do well.
Let's have final thoughts, Anna.
Bernie would have done a hell of a lot better in the general versus Trump, because his position, and it was only that one instance where he voted for that 1990 for a crime bill. He explained himself, and he could have got past himself on that. He at least went to the black community, and I mean directly to the black community, on several occasions. Donald Trump didn't go to the black community once, and I'm not counting those bullshit setups that his friends arranged at a black church in Detroit, another church where he was supposedly going to compliment a church about helping with the water situation in Flint, and those bullshit setups at the Trump Towers where he supposedly had 100 black evangelists that were initially supposed to come out to support him, and that was a bullshit story.
I was inspired by your Thanksgiving point.
Yes,
I think a lot of people are dreading Thanksgiving this year. I think Thanksgiving this year is actually an amazing opportunity. We're going to be around the table from people who really came out of this very bruised. So I want to propose a question that maybe families in America can ask around the table this year, which is, what did you learn this year from all of this that changed you? Did you learn anything this year that you were willing to say, I was moved by that. I got somewhere I wasn't before. I think that's a place to begin this kind of effort.
Eddie.
Ditto. I just can't wait to go back home to Mississippi. I can't wait for my Jamaican in-laws to come for Thanksgiving and for us to talk about what this means for us. Because the future is right in our hands, it seems to me.
Michael.
I think sitting at that Thanksgiving table, the thing to do is for all of us to agree that we have more in common than not. And if we make a list of the things we care about, we want great schools for our kids. We want to breathe clean air. We do believe the polarized caps are melting. Women, if they're doing the same job as men, should be paid the same amount of money. We agree on more of these things. And the things that we don't agree on, whether it's guns or abortion or gay marriage, then let's just agree to disagree. Let's have the great debate.
Michael,
and whoever wins it, wins it.
Have you found that? We say this all the time. I always have people come and say, tell me everything's going to be okay. We're so divided as a nation. And for 8 years, for 10 years, whether I'm talking to Republican crowds or Democratic, we say just what you said. Go out to America. And whether we're talking at the 92nd Street Y, or whether I'm in Demopolis, Alabama, or whether I'm in, Bakersfield, California, I hear the same thing from people who want the same thing. And you're right. Maybe we're different on guns, on abortion.
Well, if I don't want to own a gun, I won't own a gun.
Right.
You want a gun, have a gun, be safe with it, lock it away so the kids can't get it.
But on the vast majority of issues, we really are so much closer.
That's right.
Than Washington and cable news and blogs and newspapers would have Americans think.
And we are more decent than we behave.
Yes. That's absolutely.
Well, except for Willie and me.
Yeah.
An exception to that rule.
Except, let me just say, I believe Hillary did behave decently.
Oh, she was one.
So when you say the we are, it's a euphemism for one.
But I'm talking about all of us.
One candidate.
Internet commentators,
I know,
trolls, the whole
But
complex.
I just don't want the false equivalency of she was decent, Bernie was decent. They offered a plan. The man who won through the Electoral College did not present that plan and wasn't decent and hurt a lot of people. I went to the demonstration at Union Square the other night. I don't know how many thousands were there, but listen to these kids, especially kids of color. They are scared.
He has a responsibility. He has a responsibility right now.
In a huge way.
To bind the wounds of this country.
As we go, I would just endorse Anand's call for a two-way street of cultural curiosity. From the elites on the coast, cultural condescension is never a good look. Try to understand why people in the middle of the country are who they are, what they believe. And from the middle of the country, understand the very real fears that you're talking about that under Donald Trump, black, brown people, Muslims have right now. And I'll say again what I said last hour. Donald Trump, when he sees these stories like we've seen the last couple of days, kids being harassed in middle schools, women being harassed as they walk down the street, he's got to come out and say there's no place for it. I know I sort of winked at a lot of this stuff during the campaign. I'm now president of the United States. I'm about to be president of the United States. There's no place for it.
Except his first tweet as president-elect late last night was protesters,
right.
And he writes, very unfair.
And then he
very unfair.
5 hours later.
Then somebody got to him and he tweeted a correction this morning.
Oh, what was the correction I missed?
I'll find it for you.
How about if he goes and has a Thanksgiving dinner at a mosque in this country?
And so Yeah, there was a follow-up. I'd only say this, and I'll be talking to my Republican brothers and sisters around the table, because they're the ones right now that need to be talked to, I think, more than anybody, and it's not my job to talk to Democrats and tell them what they need to do, because it sounds like you guys got that covered. Republicans need to understand that it's their responsibility to seek common ground. It's their responsibility to not make the same mistakes that political parties have made over the past decade. Because if they don't, 2 years from now, they will be thrown out of office. Think about this. In 2004, George W. Bush was reelected, and Karl Rove spoke of a, quote, permanent majority. 2 years later, Nancy Pelosi was sworn in as the first woman Speaker of the House. 2 years later, Barack Obama is elected, and it is the age of Aquarius. It is the dawn of a new era. Republicans are finished forever. 2 years later, the rise of the Tea Party. 2 years later, because of the overreach, the re-election of Barack Obama. 2 years later, Republicans gained more seats in the midterm than any time since 1928. And 2 years later, Bernie Sanders shatters the Democratic Party the same way Donald Trump shatters the Republican Party. And if Republicans seek common ground, they may actually be able to do what no party's been able to do over the past 10 years, survive for 2 years. If they don't seek common ground, and if they don't stop making politics the type of blood sport that it was when I was in Congress, I'll take the blame. That it was when Bill Clinton was president, when George W. Bush was president, when Barack Obama was president. They'll keep throwing you out every 2 years, replacing you with another party, and then throwing that party out. And pretty soon, they'll just throw both parties out. So we Republicans have to show grace, and we've got to seek common ground, and seek it soon.
And the country's at stake.
And the country is at stake. Let's surprise America. And I think that goes not only for members of Congress and my Republican friends in Congress, that goes for all of us.
Good morning, Joe. Thanksgiving challenge.
There it is. Michael Moore, Anand and Eddie, thank you so much for...
All right. So it went almost 60 minutes, but I think just seeing this interview or panel was well worth the time spent, because surprisingly, Michael Moore got it. He got it for both sides. He got it for the Democratic side, and he got it for the Republican side, because he was just looking at it with an unjaundiced eye. The other two gentlemen, as far as I'm concerned, no, they really didn't get it. And Eddie, in my opinion, is a bit biased as far as how he was looking at things.